Let's talk about other complexity layers in ClickHouse. These are usually hidden, and you don't know about them until you have to operate it. And that's specifically it. ClickHouse is an operational monster. It has it has literally hundreds of system tables, and you have to know some of them to debug, to monitor the cluster. And there is like more than 1,000 settings you can tweak to have more performance, to enable feature flags, to control how parts are ingested. And you have to know them both individually and the conflicts they may have between them, okay? Other things you have to take into account, upgrades, okay? The open source version of ClickHouse makes a minor release every month. And a fun fact is that they use year a month for the release version. Upgrades don't have to be necessarily complex, but they might be. At least you cannot just trust on upgrading a version and that's it. You have to have a mechanism for it. We can talk about this in later episodes. And it's important to know that given that complexity on upgrades and operations, you might need a dedicated team, an expert dedicated team that knows about those internals, okay? Another thing to mention is, apart from having a dedicated infra team, you are going to need a data team because ClickHouse internals are very tricky. And we've talked about scalability in ClickHouse, but most of the times you achieve scalability not adding more infrastructure, but solving data engineering problems, okay? And this is what specifically data engineers do. They do pipelines, they do schema and data modeling, which in ClickHouse is very relevant. They know how to run and orchestrate complex data workflows, data quality, governance, etc. And because they are data engineers, they usually don't have the tools, or they don't have the skills, or they don't have the way, because the product is where what they are managing is different, to apply the same practices that developers do. They usually don't do version control, testing, continuous integration, or they don't have a way to do local development, okay? So you end up having a coordination problem between teams. So you have now 3 teams to coordinate: infra, data, and product. They have different responsibilities. They have different tools, workflows, life cycles, and whenever you as a product engineer that is used to deliver like every day, several times per day, you need to deploy a new analytics use case, and imagine the feature you need, it's not in your ClickHouse cluster in production. Well, you may need to do an upgrade, which can take hours, days, weeks, it depends. Or if you need a specific new materialized view that solves a use case or that optimizes it, you might need help from the data team. And this can take hours to implement, but days to bring to production, depending on the size of your tables, okay? And if you think about it, about how developers used to work, I like to call DevX not as a developer experience, but developer expectations. So what do developers and software engineers expect when they work or when they build a product? They want or they expect local development. They usually are used to deploy stateless apps, and database deployment is completely different. It's another paradigm. Life cycle is completely different. And ideally, they are fine with SQL. They sometimes use abstractions on top of it. But what they don't expect is having specific ClickHouse expertise. It's fine that you learn about it, but ideally you want a more straightforward way to interact with your database. Okay. So yeah, there is something nice about ClickHouse, that is that being open source, there is a nice ecosystem around it. But in my opinion, there are three things that doesn't make it super great. First is sometimes it's hard to find the right tool for the job. You may see lots of GitHub repos with tools from solo developers that solve specific issue and you cannot use because they are abandoned. For the projects that are actually maintained, you might find you need like a lot of different tools for your day-to-day job. You need some library as a client to do requests. You may need another for data migrations. You may need one tool as an ORM if you want to use it, or to handle schemas. Then you may need another for database management or introspection, another for observability. So things start to get complicated. And if you take a look at the ecosystem, it's very data engineering centric. Sometimes it's look like the creators haven't dog-fooded their tools. It's like, okay, we have an ORM, let's do a plugin for ClickHouse. But does it make sense? I don't know, because I don't use it. I'm not solving any problem. I'm just adding another layer on top of my product, okay?